Welcome to the One Advantage podcast, exploring the intersections of peer power, culture, and agility. Your hosts, Mike Richardson, Jason Richmond, and Leo Butari, co-founders of the One Advantage community of practice and advantage peer groups. For more information, please visit us at the One Advantage podcast.
Welcome back, everybody, to the One Advantage podcast. This is Jason Richmond. My two co-hosts couldn't be with us today, Leo Butari and Mike Richardson. They're both out on assignment, engaged with clients, focusing on enhanced performance. But I do have a special guest here today. His name is Bill Bertolet. Bill is not only a member of my team, but and a really good friend, but an exceptional leader and a champion of culture. Bill started his career at IBM and very quickly moved into the people side of performance improvement space in his professional career. He's worked 20 plus years leading international consulting groups and trainings, focusing on sales of growth and improving client and employee retention. 9 years ago, he jumped off the ledge and founded and started his company called Level Up. And it's really an organization focused on clients for developing growth strategies and spreading leadership best practices across the organization to create some consistency and collaboration. And today he's supporting a number of national and international clients, still focusing in those industries of healthcare, financial services, and medium box retail. Bill, I can't tell you how excited and how excited I am for the audience to have you join us today. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Jason. Always great to be in the company of a two-time best-selling author.
Appreciate that. Today's topic, Bill, we're gonna talk about learning and development, kind of new strategies, and coming out of business crisis, coming out of COVID, coming out of creating new workspaces, new hybrid workforces. There's a lot of different new strategies and new trends. You're working with clients every day. I'm working with clients every day. I thought it'd be a valuable opportunity just to hear from people that are in the weeds, working with clients on L&D strategy and what's really going on. So that's kind of the topic of our today. I'd like to start out with you. I mean, what are some of the key areas of focus that you're actually focused on with your clients right now?
Well, coming out of the pandemic, I thought it was a really telling time, certainly for us in this space, because we found out quickly that organizations look at learning and development as something that's important, but not necessarily urgent. And so, a lot of organizations, when things got tough, they really kind of shuttered that whole learning and development. And you know what? You said it interesting, even for individuals, when they go through personal crises, you get to see the true colors of the person. And I felt that was the same case with organizations. You got to see really how committed were they to their employees and how were they focused on making that continual investment.
Yeah.
And frankly, some had to stop, but those who still maintained the investment and recognized that, we still had to maintain the culture that we had to work on retention, because when the pandemic hit, employees were all of a sudden had different choices and different outlooks.
Yeah, for sure, right? Different priorities too.
Mm-hmm.
I was just yesterday, I had a 3-hour meeting with a customer of ours, and it was with the learning and development team, who are responsible for the entire organization's leadership curriculum, leadership development pathing, and things like that. And a big part of our conversation was about the changes in leadership today, their role, right? And structuring their development plans based on the role that they have to play in an organization right now. And this was fascinating. We came up with 4 different roles, and I'm seeing this repeated in other organizations. But a leader today, we come up with 4 very definitive roles that a leader has to play. One is diagnosing and deciding, right? Leaders always have to be able to step back, take a look at the big picture, realize what's going on, and make critical decisions. The second one is they're constantly got to be an agent of change. So they not only got to support change coming down from the top, but they've got to be an innovator of change, and they got to be, have their foot on the gas in regards to critical change. The other one is implementer of action. It's the leader's responsibility to motivate, inspire, drive people to actually execute and engage. And the fourth role of that leader in today's world is the reflective learner. And to be able to step back and reflect on the experiences, the experiential things that are going on, and course correct and change. And we're really designing this leadership pathway totally based on those four roles. That leaders today, in our mind, have to have all four of those roles. I mean, do you find those critical in what you're doing with the people you coach and that type of thing?
Well, yeah, the whole aspect of how they ultimately embrace and accept change. I mean, let's face it, when organizations are faced with change, and that was very clear during the pandemic, and it's very clear now as the markets have shifted, are there leaders leading the change, or do they allow that fear to take them over? One of my clients is an international telehealth service organization, and they experienced rapid growth. And by the way, they were one of the great benefactors during the pandemic, right? I mean, talk about being in the right place at the right time, multinational. But yet they still found, though, is that this whole concept, or what was termed the Great Resignation, even though they were growing and people like to be a part of a growing organization, that the culture wasn't really support people identifying with the organization. And so they started to focus on frontline leaders when it comes to who could have the greatest impact on the largest number of people in the organization. And that's where they focused on frontline leaders, because they felt that they would have a chance to turn the tide of this whole Great Resignation concept.
I've always said that frontline leadership is kind of the kingpin of culture, right? They've got the opportunity to hear the messages from individual contributors and take those messages up, but they also receive those messages, and it's the way they communicate change and direction down. And I believe to this day wholeheartedly that they are the kingpin of organizational culture. Right now, I'm working on a blog that'll get released next week, all around how do we create the right environment, the right work environment for non-desk employees, right? People on manufacturing, people on healthcare floors, people in retail. I mean, you have experience in these industries, right? Do you in what you do? How often do you get engaged in the direction and the culture and the environment within those non-desk employees?
Well, yeah, it's a great way to describe it, the non-desk employee, because they sometimes they don't even see themselves as a leader. So when organizations do work with them, one of the things they have to work on is really help them recognize that as a leader, you have a brand, and how others see you and the outside world sees you all of a sudden makes a big impact. So the work we do is to first really help make sure that they've elevated in their mind that they're responsible to lead these people, and they have to see how others see them, so that they are able to engage in their workforce.
Yeah, absolutely. You're like me. We're probably always reading research, reading other people's material, paying attention. One thing I really like to pay attention to is the annual human capital report that Deloitte publishes every year. And there's been some consistent trends in that, coming out of this crisis and coming into the new way of working. And it's all around psychological safety, right? Our culture work that we've been doing has a huge element of that psychological safety format. And how do you create that element of safety within the organization? Does that come up in your world?
Well, yeah, I mean, you think of it with the challenge now is like companies are trying to get their employees back to work, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's been working from home and got really comfortable with it, right?
Yeah.
Commute, and almost it shifted balance they went from work focused, and now they have more work life balance, almost to the deficit that they don't want to go back into the office. I find the great struggle is, firms are sneaking back in. Okay, just one day a week, and then but we'll have a special meeting, then we'll have one on the second day of the week. And I admire the large financial firms in New York where it used to be traders had to be on the floor, and yet now they don't. But they realize they've lost that culture that being on the floor with other brokers creates. So they're ready to pull the plug and mandate it because they realize they can't be as competitive as they once were.
Yeah, I was in a root cause analysis on that very topic a couple weeks ago, and a challenge the organization was having was people fighting coming back to work, and I challenged what we were talking about, because they said one of the primary reasons was, getting back into the commute and wasted time and wasted productivity with the commute, right? And we really worked on challenging that. Is that a reason or is that an excuse? And we peeled back the onion and really tried to identify. I mean, it's easy to say, I don't want to come back to work because I don't want that commute anymore, right? Mm-hmm. But what's the real reasons people don't want to come back into that office, right? It comes down to that culture and that work environment, that camaraderie, that ability to belong and be inclusive, be understood, be empowered, be heard, have value to the organization they're coming to. If you're going to get in a car or a train or on a bus to commute somewhere, you want to show up and be valued, right? Your presence there and your contributions want to be recognized, and they want to be valued, and you want to feel like people are excited for you to be there.
Mm-hmm. Well, you said in your Culture Spark book that one of the problems with culture is complacency. You called it the silent killer. Well, now you have companies where they've recruited and hired people that have never been in an office. They've never been face to face with the people they work with. And, so that's like a facade of a culture, right?
Yeah.
I can be wearing shorts underneath, but I'm just wearing a nice polo shirt on the top, right? But the whole thing is that people are now just, what do they look like on the screen versus how do they interact with people and how do they build relationships? One of the firms, it was interesting, is that they saw this divide going on when they were more in the height of COVID, and they mandated 20-minute get to know you calls, and they gave people a script so that they would, so they didn't have to think of what questions am I going to ask to keep this conversation going for 20 minutes. Usually they barely got past the first 5 questions. All of a sudden, people that they've only seen on a screen now have a bit of a connection with somebody. And what was interesting is they said, as they came into normal, typical conflict issues, if people had that pre 20-minute connection meeting, problems were solved faster. So this whole, it scares me when employees are kind of running the show and saying, I don't want the commute, but that's really complacency at its best. And so I encourage leaders to step up and say that the benefits they get of being in the office will outweigh the commute.
Yeah. Absolutely. If people on the show is enjoying this, I mean, you can always find us and find our podcast at www.idealoutcomesinc.com and also www.theoneadvantage.com. So please go to either place and really check us out and pay attention to our conversation flows. We'd greatly appreciate it. But one of the topics I wanted to get into today, Bill, is really trying to identify with you 3 to 5 major trends in regards to leadership development strategy, talent development strategy. I've got ideas. I've got clients just like you, and we're all doing a little bit of different things. But the one big trend that I'm dealing with on a daily basis is in learning paths and development paths is really focusing on peer group cohort models, right? I mean, it's obvious. Everyone knows learning's going virtual. It's going to micro learning. It's gamification, that type of stuff. But the ability to bring like-minded peers together and create experiential learning rather than educational presentation is really one of the biggest trends I see in leadership development in organizations today. Are you finding the same? Are you finding something different? I mean, that learning from your peers and the experiential learning and relevancy and application to it, I think is really the direction they're going.
Well, yeah. I mean, if whatever percentage of learning stays virtual,
Yep.
then the organizations that best adapt to that and can create that experience. We think of it as such a static environment. You're on a Zoom call, you're on a WebEx call, a Teams call, right? And all of a sudden, it brings back those horrible memories of being in a big conference room where people would give a presentation and it would be coined death by PowerPoint.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because guess what? It's so static, right? There's no interaction. The organizations that recognize the value to create the experience you're talking about, Jason, are the ones that make sure they have the best use of all the technology to have the breakout rooms, to have the small group discussions, to make sure that all the cameras are on. I mean, for cameras to be off, that talk about complacency,
Yeah.
right? So what they're working on is to make it as interactive as possible. And we just finished a project for that large telehealth service organization, and they were in those cohorts. They were there for 2 hours a week for 9 consecutive weeks. The one woman, Pam, said to me, she goes, when I came into this, I was intimidated because I heard they made you participate. I'm usually the person that likes to be with the camera off, folding laundry in the background. And she said by the 5th session, she goes, I actually started to enjoy participation. I mean, you would call on us, right? You'd give us, prep time and all that. But she said, my confidence grew. Now, if you had told me, before virtual learning that we could grow confidence in virtual training, I'd say no. But we all figure it out, and how you still make people's body temperature rise because you're putting them on the spot. They have to participate, small groups. You have questions. They have to participate in the chat. They have to go on live. Those experiential things with a team, all of a sudden, even though they don't work in the same office building, they work around the country, they feel like a team now. So you're definitely have defined that the right way.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And you said confidence. Confidence in my mind is a soft skill, right? I have seen a 100% complete shift to a deeper focus, a stronger focus on leadership and on leadership training around soft skills, right? Developing the confidence, communications, inspiration, resiliency, right? These are all soft skills in leaders, because how we work is a different world than it was 2 years ago. I mean, these soft skills are needed to incorporate in how we meet, how we communicate, how we plan, how we leverage our time, how we prioritize our time. How do we assign work to our teams in hybrid workforces? How do we organize teams? The soft skill elements of leadership are so critical in the way we work. So
yeah. Well, and I think it's so interesting. So this one financial services firm, one of the largest in the world, they bring on and develop somewhere north of 1,200 new financial advisors every year. And they used to do this in a learning development with cohorts coming in. Now, the likeness of one another was that they were just starting their career in financial services. Some of them had industry experience, but 90% didn't. And they used to come into the one headquarter location, spend a full 2 weeks there. Well, now it's all virtual. And what they have found when you talk about confidence, Jason, is that you still, when you do this type of work, and it's essentially sales training, you need to give the people scripts, but then they have to practice out loud in the sessions, and they're held accountable to it. And you start to see their confidence grow when it comes to how to overcome difficult objections. For a new financial advisor, the greatest fear is, why would I switch and give all my assets under management to somebody that's 6 months in when I have a guy that I've been working with for 20 years that's known all the market cycles? How do you handle that objection, right? Well, guess what? We give them the formula to handle the objection, and then they practice it in the groups, right? So you talk about building confidence. It still can happen in a cohort experience virtually. and that allows them to ultimately enter the marketplace and have a chance to survive.
So what you're saying is even in a cohort model, you can still have an environment of learning that's really hyper personalized and also very adaptive to the individual.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. And you do that through coaching, right?
Yeah.
From the practice and the coaching. You do quite a bit of one-on-one executive coaching, do you not, at Level Up?
Yes. Yeah. That's been a big part of the growth model for my consulting firm. And once again, yes, you'd love it to be face to face, but frankly, at this point, I think it would be a wash whether one is better than the other, because what we now have is the convenience of getting together for that half hour every week, right? And so we're coaching on issues, and we still have that contact, but we can still have the accountability of go out, put it to use, and come back in a week, and let's talk about what happened. So. In individual coaching, the virtual world has actually, I think, flourished.
Yeah, I agree. Our ideal outcomes too. Our coaching profile has gone through a great growth spurt too, because it's that real time business application coaching that we're finding ourselves doing, where we're a leader, a C-level leader, an executive leader, a middle level manager. They're having a business challenge and they want that real-time coaching right now instead of a long drawn out educational process. So we're seeing the coaching business really pick up in an agile way. And that's really a component of agile leadership, right? To be real-time, to work in sprints, to break down big problems into small chunks and those types of things. Right.
Yeah. I think, it started in lean manufacturing and just in time, right? Inventory, right?
Yep.
Well, I think learning and development has had to adjust to be just in time in the way that they support. And this virtual world, so whether it's cohorts going together, but you can all of a sudden have 20 people together from 5 time zones and be implementing something quickly. And being able to hold people accountable and do it over a period of time. So organizations that are leaning into this cohort experience, where it involves people in all different locations, are now finding that what was missing of bringing people together has a better chance of being achieved.
Yeah, for sure. So Bill, you and I have been friends and colleagues for over 20 years. So I'm pretty confident that I can put you on the spot here with a question. For our listeners, anyone thinking about, restructuring their L&D strategy, creating a new way of developing their talent, focusing on human capital management. If you had to give them a couple words of advice in regards to their thought process, their strategy, those types of things, what type of advice would you give a listener that's in that spot?
Well, I working in this space, the one thing that I always see that doesn't work is these dragged out long-term strategies. You know what? We're in a world now where we can come up with a strategy and test it very quickly. We don't have to be waiting and for all the cards to be aligned. I think what we find is then it's paralysis through analysis, and all of a sudden organizations are at best not making it work. I work with a small regional home healthcare company based out of Philadelphia, and everybody's competing for that next home health aide. And by the way, God bless these people coming in and taking care of our loved ones, right? Not getting paid a lot of money. Well, and being able to retain them. So this firm decided to do focus groups, which would allow us to have these caregivers come in and talk about their world so that we can structure the company and do learning and development to support them. Well, guess what? It doesn't take months, years to do this. We went in, we hit a focus group. We did 2 of them, and we came out with just some really specific key learnings on what learning and development could then execute. And then with virtual learning, so from the time of the focus group to where we're executing was within 45 days. I don't know many organizations that pull that off. And that's what I mean. I think they need to bring speed to this, just like they try to bring speed to the manufacturing process.
Yeah. Again, a great example of agility within learning and development.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Absolutely. Well, guys, again, I want to thank you for joining us today. And Bill, I can't thank you enough for joining. I think the insight you provide, the experience you're bringing to the table. I mean, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you being a key member of our team and the success you've had with Level Up, the value you bring on a daily basis. I learn from you every day. So thank you for joining us today. And again, guys, check us out at idealoutcomesinc.com and the oneadvantage.com. Join our peer community on the oneadvantage.com. And I want to thank you for your time today, and we will see you the next episode.
Thanks for listening to the One Advantage podcast. If you liked this episode, please consider helping us by rating us wherever you listen, spreading the word, having us as a guest on your podcast or webinar, and mentioning us in social media. Find us at the One Advantage podcast, where you can get more information about us and this episode. Thanks again for listening, and we look forward to more great episodes to come.